I'm going to go ahead and start. Amanita Muscaria mushrooms, as Clark told you the other day, have played an important role in most every religion that's established with a big group of followers. In other words, there's a lot of other types of religions on the planet, and a lot of people that just follow philosophies. So the question is, why is this mushroom the one that's always depicted in art in all these other religions? And the answer is pretty simple when you think about it. It's connected to us. It's been connected to us for a long time. We as human beings have a relationship with this, and possibly a relationship that goes back to lifetime before lifetime before lifetime, because we think there's some type of an oversoul of humanity, some type of a cosmic consciousness. So we depict it in our art, and it's always depicted as a lucky symbol, like this. This is 4-leaf clovers and a horseshoe, and it's like, yay, I'm lucky. Wow. So coming to a conference like this and talking about this is pretty important. Here we are at the conference. If you notice, it's hard to see, but this is an abacus made out of mushrooms strung up between the trees. And down here in the corner we have our friends under the Christmas tree, or the pine tree. I jump ahead of myself. So books come out dealing with religions and mushrooms and how they're used in the religions. John Allegro was a brilliant linguist, and he pointed this out to the point that really there's hardly any argument with what he's saying. Really, if you look into it and you study it, and then you go in and you look at the religion and the doctrines themselves, there's no question that it's there. So why is it behind this one? Christianity. Well, we have the story of the original people, supposedly. And our original people, which is all of us, mankind, are supposed to be the descendants of these two. And what's significant about these two? Because in the Bible it says that there were other people there. If you look at it, it'll tell you right in there. Cain's being kicked out of his family, and he's told to go and find a wife. Really? Where am I supposed to go find a wife if there wasn't anybody else on the planet? These are two changed beings. Is our family history and the heritage of us is embedded in these two changed beings here. These beings are changed because they've eaten of this fruit right here. And the ancient mythology tells us that this fruit opens your eyes and lets you know the difference between good and evil. What does that mean, if we know the difference between good and evil now? We think that's pretty simple. We're trying to figure out the difference. But in the oldest stories, there were gods that came to our planet from somewhere else. According to Zechariah Sitchin and the Earth Chronicles, and one of the world's leading scholars on ancient Sanskrit and even cuneiform, which is what's the symbolic language that was written in Mesopotamia and Sumeria. So he writes that the beings that did this whole story here, because the original story of these two people eating this fruit comes from Sumeria, that there were beings that came to our planet from another planet. So he's talking about literally the same thing that so many other cultures on the planet talk about. They talk about intervention or some type of contact with light beings or beings from another world. One of the first ways I found out about this mushroom was I went to a UFO conference, of all things, back in the 70s. And there was a guy named Gabriel Green, who's one of the eminent first guys that really did a lot of work in ufology. I went to his conference, and he was saying at the conference, there's this thing that you eat, and then you can go up into the UFOs. And that's what Gabriel Green was saying. And I'm sitting there going, what? This is hitting me like that. Is anybody offended by dirty language in here? Are you?
What's dirty language?
Good, okay. So, never mind I said that. I just wanted to make sure that I'm not going to blow somebody out of the water. If I haven't got done by, if I can't offend somebody, I'll probably wind up usually offending everybody, because all these religions that I'm talking about, I'm going to show you why they're all wrong and they're all screwed up and they've turned the world into a dump. Okay, so mental, spiritual, physical So basically, this story of Sumeria is translated as these beings that came here from another world, and they manipulated the DNA of the beings that they found here, which is, we presume, Neanderthal, or maybe somewhere around there, or maybe even back farther, because these clay tablets actually go back millions of years and talk about us being here for literally millions of years. They also talk about battles and things that happen between planets. Now, this could be all mythology, and it probably is. So
you're a Scientologist, aren't you?
No, I'm not a Scientologist. but I went and saw the movie, and I'll tell you what that movie's wrong, is that they say that the gold of the Anunnaki, these beings that came here were called the Anunnaki, and that they enslaved mankind or created us so that we would be their servants to gather them the gold. They wanted gold. Now, all these other researchers are saying, well, it's gold, and they want to make gold. And here I'm thinking, well, alchemist gold, like Clark says in his book, is so obviously this, because these turn gold. So these ancient beings came here and enslaved mankind, genetically manipulated us to gather the gold. And if you go into Egypt, down in the oldest place, which the ancient Cometian religion says is the first place that the aliens landed on our planet, and when you go there, it's called Abu Gharaib, and it's just unbelievable. They have all these weird things carved out of granite that look like gears. It's like they have this gigantic machine there or something. These tubes where all these, they say it's a landing site, basically. And by looking at it, you would think it's pretty damn likely it is a landing site, the way it's set up. But so these beings came here and manipulated us. And the first two people were the two people that got manipulated. This is the genetic manipulation when they eat this mushroom. We have personification of the gods in anthropomorphism, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now here we have Christianity, where you have the symbol of the mushroom. You have all of the things like the drinking of the blood in the cups that's coming out of his wounds. And you have the story of the Holy Grail, where somebody caught some blood here that was not an angel, but a human. And maybe supposedly Joseph of Arimathea, and he takes the Grail cup, and it becomes the Holy Grail. All these stories originating in the same mythology, which is the really old Mesopotamian and even the Egyptian and Cometian mythology. This is really cool. Now here's a mystical symbol of the serpent on the cross. Now this, and religious people will tell you, oh my God, this is a symbol of the devil. That's the devil. What's that? I'm looking out here upside down. It should be. Oh no.
Well, that's an alchemical symbol.
It's totally an alchemical symbol, and it has a lot to do with the mushroom. And this is the pharmacopoeia of our Nationalist Institute government. Or our federal government. We are the federal government. You will do the drugs we tell you to do, or we will send police to your house to feed them to you every day, which is new legislation coming in right away. If you don't agree with society, they're going to say you're crazy, and then they're going to implement drugs that you must take, and they'll be sending people to your house. They'll be starting to do this with alternative sentencing, and it's living that way right now. Really not too good. So these are the guys that we're supposed to look up to. They've assumed the symbols. They've taken the symbol, the power of authority, the secret understanding, and the knowledge of the symbols. And if you look all over the country, the Freemasons have symbolic stuff throughout all the government. These people claim the power of this, because this is the secret knowledge here. They claim the power of pharmacopoeia. Now, they will be the doctors, and they will take control of the medicine. If you're a practicing vegetarian hanging out in the woods and you're eating herbs, you'll be considered a witch, and you have been considered a witch for thousands of years. They've been burning and persecuting and murdering people for the things that they take, the drugs that they take. So now the government takes control of all the pharmacopoeia. We are no longer in control. And if you take it, you will go to jail, they say. So this is literally a pharmacratic inquisition that we're under right now. It's no different, is it? The inquisitions of old, what did they do? They went out and they found the witches and they tried them and they burned them. We think that, this kind of stuff can't happen around here now. Well, it's happening right now. They're taking people and they're throwing them in jail for being a witch. Literally, because they want to take control of their own pharmacopoeia. And they'll have stuff like this right out in the middle of the park. What does this mean? This is a symbol for the mushroom, the fountain. It's so obvious that it is. This one has naked children down here, which who knows how long that'll stay there. They'll probably chop that down and burn it as a... Now here's why we call Jesus or why he calls himself the fountain of living waters. It's because he is the fountain of living waters. And this is an understanding of the symbolism of the mushroom. It's anthropomorphism. The mushroom has been created as a god, and the god has been told about through symbolism. So Jesus is a mushroom, as John Allegro said, and he is a god, or this mushroom is a god, as so many of the ancient religions tell us. But it's kind of funny that, there's naked kids there again. Man, they're going to have to throw that thing away. They're going to have to go hunt down the people that did that and kill them. St. Nicholas. Interesting symbolism in St. Nicholas. I love this saint. He's the highest powered saint in Russia. Just only below the 12 apostles is he revered in Russia. And Russia is another example of the pharmacratic inquisition, actually, because even the icon that the government created to replace the local shaman, who would be the person that's like us, the practicing pharmacopoeists, and they'll take the symbols of the practicing shaman and they'll create an icon to replace it. So now you don't go to your local shaman anymore. You go to the state-created shaman, which is St. Nicholas now, because he has the symbols and he's taken upon himself the power of the mushroom and the colors. St. Nicholas is a pretty interesting saint. Not as such, but what he becomes eventually in the end. The sacred meal was always about eating the mushroom, and supposedly at the end of times, as in this time, we're supposed to find out what the true sacrament is. When we find out what the true sacrament is, then it comes down from heaven as a new Jerusalem, and on both sides of it is the 12 plants that bear the 12 leaves of immortality, and right in the middle of it is the fountain of waters, and here's the main thing, is the fountain of waters. And it says, you can drink of the fountains of waters of life now freely. Here comes the new age, the new thing sets down from heaven. Now here you can drink the waters of life.
Isn't it possible that the fountain might have more to do with that story of when Jesus was 12 and went to Egypt? He was initiated into the blue water lily cult.
Well, it's not, the water lily isn't shaped like a mushroom, so it could be, a lot of these things, these plants are told in symbolism as a group of plants, just like we know now, groups of different plants. We're the best shaman on the planet for all time that we know about because we know the most plants. Usually shamans throughout the world were the powerful people. They were the ones that had the insight, the understanding, the ability, and especially the knowledge of the pharmacopoeia. They became the shaman. And shaman usually, in the past, have been restricted to the plants that they have available locally to them. Now, as we come into our time, now we're the New Age shamans, and we have availability of a whole pharmacopoeia of things, which is exactly the stuff that they want to take away from us. We have the best shamanistic ability the world has ever known right now on our planet because of this. Secret doorways and entrances into Christian churches always shaped like mushrooms. I have slides of tons of them. It's really, really incredible. Does anybody see the shape of the guy standing like this? It's kind of like Cheech and Chong or Tony John. Hey man, what you got for me, man? I don't even think it's really there. It came out kind of blurry. That's the way it was in the picture. So, but there's so many things like this to point out that here behind his head he's got the red and white spotted symbol. This is also a religion that has taken upon itself the power of the mushroom because it's taken its symbolism. It's saying, now here's the guy of the mushroom. And that's what really all religions wind up saying. Here's Buddha. Buddha is of the mushroom, if you dig into it enough. If you look at the paper by Mike Crowley or some others that talk about Buddhism and Amanitas, you'll find that they all claim the power of it. And they claim the power of it, they usually keep the power to themselves. It's like the box of manna in the Ark of the Covenant. The manna in the Ark was the Amanitas. Moses went up on the mountain and saw the burning bush.
I think it was a pot of manna, which is not insignificant.
Right, yeah.
Not a box, but
exactly.
A round pot.
Yeah, a round pot, which is totally another symbol for it. But they keep the knowledge to themselves, because if you were an Israelite and you were hanging out with Moses, according to the story, who knows, Moses is Nebo and Nebo is Meses, it's all the same story, all the way back through Babylon. 4,000 years before that, it's all the same thing. So they keep the power to themselves by hiding the manna, because if you looked in there and you found out what the manna was, they would kill you. That was the law. You were not to look in this, you were not to touch this, you were not to even go near this, let alone no standing up and talking. If you found out what was in this, they would kill you, because it was their secret, their power, their authority, and they take it upon themselves. Now, the Gnostics and other religions have known about this and known about the power of this, so things like this come up, where you have a painter that is extremely knowledgeable. And the Catholic Church censored all painting, by the way. Clear back then, the Catholic Church has been censoring painting for 1,000 years. And come up with stuff like this. This is from the 13th century in the Play de Chorale.
Where's it from?
This is from the Canterbury Psalter, which was the Edwin Psalter. The Canterbury Psalter is 1100 AD, and the German Edwin Psalter was 800 AD. And this is symbols of. It's like Jesus is the master of the plants. He's the god. The Amanita, a blue mushroom, which is of course got to be psilocybin. Psilocybin is always associated with blue. This one here is the tricky one, and I'm thinking it's Syrian rue right now, but I'm not totally sure. But I'm still trying to work on that. This is obviously an opium poppy. And this green thing right here is really interesting, because it looks like, as my good friend Andy pointed out, and I hadn't thought about this, but this looks like a cactus. Now that would be really interesting, because if it is a cactus, if it is because of this symbol, this is like a Mayan, or an ancient symbol for that when you get into the art of the Central American people. And if it is a mushroom, it indicates that over in Europe, when this was done, they still had a pharmacopoeic knowledge of what was here in the United States.
Jim, I can see it clearly that it looks like these are all individual mushrooms.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
If I can see that more clearly, you can tell that looks, each one of those is a mushroom with a cap in the stomach.
Maybe it's showing the two different stages.
Exactly. That's what that would be. That's showing on the right. That would be showing the identifying features, and then the other one what they go to.
This is the dried ones. If you remember in Clark's presentation, when he had the dried mushrooms sitting up in the sun as they dried in the sun, it could be that. Anyway, this green vine could also be a relation to DMT, or it could be another relation to Banisteriopsis cappii, or whatever it is. We know that there's a lot of symbols.
Or the translation from this world to that.
Or the
exactly.
That green band was very much like the foliage on variegated cows.
Interesting. Of course, we know it's a plant, and maybe it's a lot of different plants.
And calamus was well known in that area at that time.
Yeah. Interesting. So, I'm not saying that I know what all these symbols are. I'm just telling you the ones that I think I know. There's got to be more to it. I know there's a lot more to it. Here's a really good one with the angels dropping a mushroom down into the burning cup. and we have the firebrand up here that's holding the fire. So it's showing that you cook it. Like Clark said, you have to cook it. All these alchemical recipes, you have to at least dry it. Say that you dry it because there's an alchemical reaction that happens and the ibotenic acid turns into muscimol in the mushroom itself. So you have an alchemical reaction. That's what this is showing, and why there's fire in the cup, because the cup is symbolic for the mushroom.
Is that why the angels are so happy?
Yeah, they do look pretty happy.
Those smiles.
Yeah. They're kind of just blissed out, aren't they? Really?
They are.
Look at this. They're just totally blissed out. And that's an interesting thing to think about too with us as shamans, because we're not just people that are taking drugs for recreational purposes, although we do enjoy it, and we believe it's our right to enjoy it in certain cases. But we're also doing it in not just to get the bliss. We're doing it to find out the inner workings of the mind, because that's what these things are all about. If we were all just running around saying, here's this planet, it's the ultimate bliss. Oh yeah, and there's a lot of things that will give you bliss like that, but it's not the same thing that really is what we're looking for all of the time. It's great to have some time that we really need to have another focus, which is the mental aspects of what it is that we're learning, the symbolism and all this. So it's like people go, hey, that totally blissed me out. It was the blissiest thing of all. Well, the Amanita Muscaria is not a blissful thing. Although, as Clark said, it is, because there's an area where you can get into where you say, oh my God, what I've seen now is just like nothing else you've ever seen. But at the same time, to try to tell somebody that, it's like you're doing the same thing again. Oh man, my bliss was just the blissiest bliss of all blisses ever. It was just the bliss. And the other person's going, yeah, and they can only relate to bliss as they understand bliss as what they've experienced as bliss. So it is pretty interesting to experience this bliss, but this is not all of what it is that we're looking for here. That's why the alchemical process is such an involved study. So this looks like the bleeding heart of Jesus to me. I love this picture. Now, one part of the mushroom is that it's depicted by the urine. It's the recycling of the urine. And what this is a story in the Bible where Jesus comes to the fountain and this girl comes up to him and she says, would you like some water? And he says, if you knew who I was, you'd ask me for water to drink. Now, what's he talking about? What could it possibly mean? Oh, I've got like the best bottled water right here. This is Evian from the 20th century. Holy mackerel, it's the best bottled water of all.
He said, I'll give you living waters,
right?
And you'll never thirst.
That's right. That's the second more in-deep part about it. So we find out that is what he's talking about. It's the waters of life. And it could mean just that he's going to make it for her and give it to her, but it could also mean that he actually produces the waters of life, which is one of the things that the alchemists know about, is that you, through your urine, produce the waters of life. And that's why in ancient India and all over the world that practiced this kind of thing, they would drink the urine of the priests that knew about this. Because this in particular mushroom goes through, and because of the alchemical reaction that happens in your body, again, the ibotenic acid turning into muscimol, you have a more powerful, more pure substance the second time.
The Bible also says living waters will flow from your belly.
Yeah, living waters will flow from your belly too. It's in the Bible. Oh, look at that. This is Mithra. This is one of the other religions where they took upon themselves the authority to give you what they wanted in pharmacopoeia, but they were a lot more open. Surprisingly, they had what they called the magic meal. Where, like, if we're in a group like this, the whole group gets the supernatural food. And they would do that, and they'd have communal, out-of-body experiences, and these really cool things they built underground. And it's really interesting. But this is one of the competing gods, really, to Jesus back at the time when Rome put it all together and started trying to create Christianity. They adopted a lot of the mythologies of Mithra. There's over 200 similarities between Mithra and Jesus. If you look back into the studies by Gerald Massey, who's one of the world's eminent ancient language association and symbolism scholars.
Can you go back to that for a second? Point out that To ruin all of you for art history ever again, because it'll ruin you for just enjoying a painting as it is, because you're all going to be looking at mushrooms. Now, it's got the signature of the Amanita, the signature shape built in, and this is the template you'll start to look for and find over and over and over again. The ball, which you've seen as the base of the mushroom, the stalk, and the winged umbrella, which the next picture will show. Excuse me.
And he's also an X-Man. If you go watch the new movie, The X-Men, you will see that this is their symbol. X-Men, the new movie, The X-Men. That exactly is their symbol. A circle with a cross right in the middle of it. Same symbol I showed you on St. Nicholas's robe, right? Remember? And there's all kinds of associations. All of this stuff is, he's got the wings up here, he's got this strange thing in his hand right here, he's got the wings down here, he's born out of the rock, born out of the stone. This is symbolic for becoming out of the mushroom, and this is another anthropomorphism. It's another anthropomorphized mushroom as a god, which is really interesting. But the interesting part that I wanted to bring up about that is that they would actually all go in and have their communal meal together. There was no secret, knowledge of it. They didn't kill you if you knew about it. That these people were actually giving it to each other, and these are another one of the reasons why the Catholic Church condemned them or went after them. That's another picture of the Mithra. Oh, this one I was going to show you is it's all the different stages. Remember Clark said yesterday, the egg, the small white rock, the snake shedding its skin, and then eventually I'll show you the bird one. Mithra, born out of stone. Gordon Wasson wrote Soma, Divine Mushroom of Immortality, where he said that Soma was this mushroom. And now, in my mind, there is no question that it was this mushroom that is Soma, and there's a lot of different things that can be substituted for this. And they can also be called Soma in some ideas, because Soma is actually translated later. The Sanskrit Soma is translated as body. And in the Bible, if you read it where it says, behold, this is my body, he's saying, behold, this is my Soma, which goes back to the same linguistic link to this ancient religion. So all these religions are linked together through this word. This is Gordon Wasson. Yeah. One of the great minds that found out some of this stuff. Pay tribute to him. So in Hinduism, he talked about the god of India being the mushroom. And here we have Harihara holding a mushroom. It's really, really obvious. And beautiful art. Here's Angkor Wat in Cambodia. And if you can see, this is a giant pine forest. It's like the glorified holy mountain of God with the pine forest right up there on top of it. Beautiful artwork. Absolutely amazingly incredible place. I've never been there, but I've talked to people that have, and I've seen lots of pictures. And the ritual that they do there is associated back in here where all these pine trees are. If you notice back behind the psilocybin mushroom, in the pine forest, that's where they used to do the mushroom rituals. They'd go in there and they'd study the philosophy and the sciences of the heavens, and the study of the stars, and the astrotheology, and all the ancient mythologies associated with our planet. Great place of learning. Amazing. And here, if you go outside, of course, you just say, oh, hang on a minute. What? You're inside here and you're in the ritual. Well, I'm not quite there yet. Hold on just a sec. Come out here. You can see him running along. Boom. Ciao. Yeah, that's better. Okay, now I'm ready. I'm having a great time now. I'm in part of that bliss that we all like to do, and we're all after. Great depiction of a pine forest here with round spotted cap mushrooms underneath. It's all over in the art in India, and there is no question about it. This is another one of Harihara, and this is really, really cool because this shows the alchemical hermaphrodite, just like Clark showed you in the paintings yesterday or the day before. And here we have mushrooms down at the bottom, red top mushroom. It looks more like a psilocybin, but it has the symbolism of the red top. And this one has kind of a bluish cap with a red glow around it. And this was shaped more like an amanita with a big broad cap. So it's almost like they swapped the Swap the colors, which is real interesting because of the sex identity, the duality of the one being the other. And in this one too, he's painted blue, so this could be a representation of psilocybin and amanitas together, and especially we have the spotted cap here. And it could be the consumption of all of them, because we've got the skull cap or the bowl that looks like a mushroom cap right here, and the conch shell and all these other auspicious symbols, which if you look into the religions, lots of them relate to the mushroom, the Dorje and the Ankh, and I mean, just on and on and on. Here in India we have obvious sexual depiction, which we don't have in Christianity anymore, because of course sex has been condemned now by all these religions. It's no more of that. We'll have no more of that. No more freedom of that. That's the big control issue of everybody, is their sexuality. So anyway, this is, I guess I got ahead of myself. Here's the stem, and there's the cap. It's the underside of the cap. Totally obvious, and these are praying here for these two to join, so that they have the creation of the universe. Because this is the male, and this is the female, obviously, and it's in the union of the male and female that, bang, all things are created eventually. And you are created, and I am created, because that's what. This is what happens. This is the actual act of creation. There's only really one thing we could say definitely is God, and that's sex. Right now. Because this is how we are literally created. If that doesn't happen, we don't come out. And this is why it's depicted this way. This is the holiest of holy things. Not that anybody should be able to tell you to do anything with it and control you through it, because this is your divine right. You know, this freedom is absolutely necessary for your consciousness, for your happiness, your well-being, your good state of mind. All of these things that you can't allow this type of oppressive, controlled, dominated religious thing that I'm going to talk about, or I'm kind of talking about as we go along. So here's another really cool Buddhist Tonka painting. Obviously, these look like gills of the mushroom. There's lots of mushroom symbolism in this. So Buddhism, which followed Hinduism, has a lot of this in it too. And of course, they're looking at the mushrooms from different views. Here's some more Buddhists meditating and working towards it. This is why Buddhist religion has so much to do with psychedelics, and why the doctrine is a little closer to what we can understand as psychedelic philosophy. And at least they have the idea of reincarnation, which is something we have to have. It was in the Bible before they took it out. It was in all these religions. We have to understand the concept of reincarnation. And that's where Buddhism was good for that part.
Where's this picture from, James?
I don't know. If I remember right, it was Cambodia. I think it was. I think I got it from the same area I got the Angkor Wat posters or picture. There's a really cool Buddhist stupa, or maybe a bell, but I think it's a stupa. But it's got the totally mushroom on top, and this is fire coming out of it. It's the fire coming right out of the top of the mushroom. Another great symbolic thing, and this is a powerful object. They understand the power of knowing about this, about what we know about. The power of the pharmacopoeia is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. More symbolism in Egypt. It's the same thing. It's the upturned cap. I really have to boogie, so I know I got to move along. This is the symbolism for reincarnation and the different states of existence that you can be incarnated into. And there's even a realm of the gods where you can become like a god, like these beings that came down here from Sirius that did all this stuff in the mythology. So this is the physical world, and this is Yama who controls it. And if he's biting the big disc, biting the big mushroom, saying, "Here I am." You have to go through this guy to get to the worlds of the heavens. You got to make it past Yama. Some of them call him Yamantaka. He's a big, bad, monstrous dude that you have to deal with. And this is part of the thing where it's not always bliss that you're dealing with. It's
the god of death in the underworld.
God of death in the underworld, just like the Egyptian god Osiris. So there's books by Andrea Pujaris that talk about mushrooms and the linguistic stuff. But primarily that deals with out-of-body experience and stuff like that. In Egypt, they got into psychedelics too, of course, because it's pre-Christianity. Egypt is known for its knowledge of pharmacopoeia, even in its name. The original name of the country is Kemet, or KMT, or Alchemit. It's A-L-K-M-T, or A-L-K-H-E-M-I-T. It is Alchemit. And they were known as the alchemists because in Egypt they knew about all of the pharmacopoeia all over the world. And this is even proven out by the thing that they found coca in Egypt and some of the mummies. Now it's possible that they grew it back in Egypt at some time because Egypt was a lot more lush at one point than it is now. But the idea that they could know all of the pharmacopoeia in the entire world comes through in the knowledge of their name. And these guys are like us. Many of us are out looking for the plants, and we're trying to find out what the plants are and what the plants do. We actively are searching for that, and that's what our entire culture should be doing. I mean, if there's nothing, that we should do more, it's to find out what these plants are that we have in their relationship to us, and we as a race should know all of the plants that are there. But this is again the pharmacopoeia, and they don't want us to know about it, and so they're going to keep it to themselves. But it's pictured in the religious art. There's another mushroom symbol in Egypt. Here's some really cool mushrooms I found on a pillar, one of these mushroom pillars. And there's all different types of things that are depicted in the Egyptian art. Full pharmacopoeia in Egyptian stuff, but particularly we have the Amanita Muscaria mushrooms here. And this is comes in the rays of Ra coming down from the sky.
That's definitely it.
There's no question. There's no question about whether it's it or not. This is why,
Does it grow in Egypt?
Yeah, it did. I mean, there used to be a lot different there than now, but it grows in Africa. It's a big continent. In Egyptian mythology, we have anthropomorphism of the god too, and this is interesting because we have the female goddess over the male consort Geb, and in the mushroom it's the female is the cap, Geb is the pillar, male is the pillar, the female is the cap. And in ancient Egyptian mythology they have this idea of the motion of the sun through the stars. As if you look at, like, this is the horizon, the sun comes up and moves here and goes down. You have the light of day which comes up, and this is, well, actually it's this way. It comes up here, and this is the birth of the sun, as the sun comes up and moves through the sky. And when Horus is born, who's the sun god, then he's born on the horizon, and that's where we get the word horizons, because Horus is risen. And we go through a period of light. This is the daytime, the sun sets, and now we have the set taking over, or the time of darkness. And that's why in ancient mythology the sun shined and the day was the light and the life, and here's the sun, here's our savior. It's all related to that, and it's related to the mushroom, and they create the mythologies based upon this. But the anthropomorphism is that these deities are the mushroom, and as we go through different stages of the sun, there's different stages of enlightenment, meaning how much we know about the mushroom on the planet. How many people, like these ancient Mithraists, are actually out there getting together in groups and eating and studying the mushroom to find out what it does. This is a stage of enlightenment that we move into. As we go over here, now we go into a stage of darkness. Now this is a 65,000-year cycle in Egypt. They take this one day and turn it into a 65,000-year cycle. And we are right here coming out of the Amen state. This state down here, it goes through all different names of states, but when the sun sets, it goes into a state of darkness that's called the Amen state. And as this happens, we go through 8,000 years of darkness, or no knowledge of the light of day, the Son of Man, the Son of God, the mushroom, no knowledge of that on the planet. It's withheld, it's hidden. And that's why this is called the Amen state, because Amen means the hidden. Now we're going through the hidden state, and eventually we're going to find out about the mushroom as it comes up and Horus is risen and the knowledge comes back into the planet, and we move into an enlightened state. Now that may not sound very scientific, but that's what the mythology is. So it's no wonder that all these religions on the planet, when they get them praying, it's blah, 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 Hocus pocus, amen. Amen, they say at the end. And what that means is that they think, so let it be. But what it really means is, so let it be hidden. So let the light of day and the brightness of God and the knowledge of enlightenment be hidden. And that's why we're in the Amen state. Because the light and the knowledge of God is hidden from us. But we're coming into this next state. This is also what happens when we move into the age of Aquarius, as we move into the water bearer, who's pouring the waters of life onto the planet, because he's enlightening the planet. In Egypt, I found lots of hieroglyphs, and here's hard to see, but this is a broad mushroom, and this is a conical mushroom, and the broad one is painted red on top, and the conical one is painted blue on top. And this paint is thousands of years old. This temple was buried, and so a lot of the color is still there from its original painting. So there's no question that Egypt is about that too. But definitely can't see that. I can't even see that at all. Oh, well. Oops. The Ankh is one of the symbols for the mushroom, and the gods feed the man again the Ankh, and that's how he becomes enlightened. They go into the state that's called the Amenta state, or the outer world, the out of the world state. At this temple in Egypt, you can stand right in front of this, and he's holding the Ankh to his mouth, and he's standing there like this. This is Amen, which also sounds like Amanita, Amen, and then his consort's name is Amenit. We got Amen and Amenit, and he's getting ready to go into a state by taking this Ankh and drinking the waters of life, because that's the
say
symbol.
so then we get the Amen.
All the way down the line. So he's going to go, and he's going to go into an out of the body state that's called Amenta. The state of mind that he's going into, the delve into the underworld, is called the Amenta. And this is the symbol for Amenta in Egyptian hieroglyphs. If you look, it looks like a mushroom, obviously, but it's got this, which indicates that the mushroom is on a mountain. It's the difference between whether the mushroom is in the valleys or whether it's on the mountain, and the symbolism. And that's what I believe is why that's depicted that way. This is the jet pillar of Egypt, which was actually the phallus of Osiris, as Clark was talking about. There's a lot of stories where the phallus of the god is cut off, and the mythology is that it lives again, or he comes back as the phallus, or he's resurrected as the phallus. This is another mushroom symbolism, this anthropomorphism of the mushroom to the god, not the man to the mushroom, but the mushroom as incarnated as the story and the mythology of a man. It's like the deification of the beast, because we are the beast. According to these ancient gods that created us, we're the beast, and they called us the beast. And so this is when you have the anthropomorphism of a mushroom as a man, you have the creation of and the raising of the image of the beast. That's the action. All this symbolism, the snake again, as Clark was saying, the jet pillar, the disc on the top, the Ankh. The phoenix is a symbol for the mushroom, all different stages of its incarnation, as Clark mentioned. And here's this symbol again in Egypt we talked about. Here's our X-Men symbol, our secret symbol for the people that know what? Our secret symbol for the people that know about the mushroom. Find it everywhere. This was taken from the Discovery Channel's website. It was a site that was about the Iceman that they found. Up in the mountains, up in the Alps. They eventually figured out, they thought he was found in Austria, but then they figured out he was like 300 feet inside of, anybody know? Italy. Yeah, Italy. Strange. Italy? Oh, come on. So this came from the Discovery Channel's website, and this is Amanita's, and they say that the Iceman, there were several things that he found. One thing that he had was a pouch of mushrooms. He had actually 2 different pouches that had 2 different kinds of mushrooms on it. One they say was a tinder for some kind of fire, and one they say was They don't actually sing. And that's the strange thing, is that I found this on the website, and I watched the specials, and they never did say, but one of my friends that saw one of the first specials said that he saw the mushrooms, they had them on there, it was on PBS, and that they looked just like amanitas. Now, I didn't see that for myself, and I haven't been able to verify that for myself. So I'm just telling you that there's a good chance that
I did see a report of what it was. They were actually dried and strung on a string, and I can't remember the genus of the other one. It's a medicinal mushroom that they still use in that area.
I've heard that. I've heard that they said there was a medicinal mushroom, but I haven't heard what it was. And my friend told me that they looked like amanitas, and I found this picture on the Discovery Channel's website when they were talking about the mushrooms that were found on the Iceman. So I don't know for sure, but he was certainly a shaman if he knew about mushrooms and had the mushrooms on him anyway. May have been just a go-ahead, but so here's the Mesopotamian, Babylonian, some of the most ancient stuff where they talk about beings that come from outer space. This is one of their icon symbols here. No question about that being a mushroom. And there's a lot of other symbols in there too. They're all mushroom symbols. But here's another great one. Here's this one's here, and the spots and the light coming out and stuff. Here's a Babylonian king that's shown holding the pine cone. And pine trees is a lot of the symbolism that's associated with the mushrooms. It's not necessarily because of the pine tree, because the pine tree is considered holy because of its relationship with the mushroom. And it's from there. Mushroom looks like gold, like I was saying. The Anunnaki were actually looking for gold. But it was these mushrooms they were looking for. And in this ancient place in Egypt that I was telling you about, there's a huge mound that goes up. And the pyramids are up on top of this mound. And then they have this weird landing site place. And then they have these bowls they're like giant bowls that the Indians would crush stuff up in. And they have a spit that comes out the side of it. It's granite stones that are carved with these fancy designs like mushroom caps all the way around it. And then the middle of it is a bowl. And then it has a cutout that comes out the side of it, which I think could be used for smashing up the mushrooms if they had a big scale production thing going on. And if they weren't actually looking for physical gold, which is my idea, not my original idea, I don't know if anyone else thought of it, but I think that they were actually after the gold of the mushrooms, and so they had mankind to go out and pick the mushrooms, not mankind to go out and dig holes in the ground and dig up and find gold, which is what these other scholars are saying that it was. And also down in Abu Ghraib in Egypt, which is the place I was telling you about, the whole mountain, if you get down and look at it, is pot shards. I mean, literally millions of tons of pot shards. Where did all these pot shards come from? What do you carry in a pot? The manna was carried in a pot. You're not going to carry gold that you dug out of the ground. But, I mean, there's literally millions, maybe billions of pot shards. It shows a huge production of some kind going on there for a long period of time. So the Anunnaki were after the mushrooms. Now here we have the symbol of the what people now are waiting for. Even some Christians believe, oh, Jesus is going to come back and he's going to be an alien. There's actually Christians that believe that, that think along those lines. Here comes Jesus, he's coming back, and he's going to have the coolest spaceship of all time. But here we have the symbol of the mushroom again, coming up in this new age mythology now. So, and that's right too, because this was the genetic manipulation. These are anthropomorphisms into the god, into this symbol. All of this stuff, all these ancient gods were anthropomorphized mushrooms as the god themselves and as the mythologies, and now we have these mythologies, and we have people on the planet that are taken into other dimensional consciousness and are abducted by aliens, they say, or they're having this hallucination on a mass scale, but they find implants and all kinds of weird things like that going on. Is it possible that there's other beings that are coming here? Could they be multidimensional, and could this key symbol here be the doorway of access to that multidimensional system. And where is it? What would it be? How would we get there? What would we find? Here's the abduction thing. When you get under the stem of the mushroom, or you get, the aliens come down, you go up into it. You're abducted into it. Hey, maybe they have something to do with Christmas. Could the aliens have anything to do with Christmas? Maybe. That would be a terrific thing. Yeah, Santa Claus. Here's an interesting icon, a white god, really, because almost every country on the planet celebrates Christmas in one form or another. It's almost universal. It's really strange. And one of the reasons is because the symbolism is so simple. Here's the all-knowing guy, the God that can tell whether you're good or bad. And if you're good, he'll give you something. And if you're bad, he won't give you something. Or even sometimes in some of the mythologies, they'll beat the shit out of you. But that's some mythologies, and not all of them. Usually, it's just you get the lump of coal or something like that. But this was put together. This mythology or this ideology was put together in the 15th century in Germany, and they metamorphized Santa Claus out of their older Germanic and Norse gods, Thor and Donner and Wotan. And these ancient gods also rode through the sky, and they were descendant gods, or it was the same mythology of the older god Osiris, who was all the same thing. All these gods that come and they do it right in the sky, and they do these different things, like throw lightning bolts to the ground, and the mushrooms pop up, and the lightning strikes on the ground. So, and the interesting thing too, if you look out in the sky and you see the Big Dipper is the chariot of Osiris. He's the lord of the underworld, and he circles the North Star, which is actually the South Star, according to Egyptian cosmology, because everything is flipped completely upside down. So we have Osiris as riding the chariot of the North Star, and then we have Thor and Donner and Wotan, who that's also their chariot, and he becomes in mythology the chariot of King Arthur, is the Big Dipper that circles through the North Star. So all these deities fly in this chariot, and they're red and white, and they come to your house to bring you the present. So what's the present that they bring you? A lump of coal, or is it something else? So lightning strikes were the things that created the mushrooms, and that's why these ancient gods were thought of as throwing lightning bolts to the ground, and here come the mushrooms from the ground. Santa Claus became pretty popular in the 15th century, and he was the white and red cheeks guy. You see the cheeks, the red. You have the white beard. This is a great Santa because of this cool outfit and everything. Here's the angel going to go get the presents for the kids that are good on the list, and here's his sack. St. Nicholas in Russia took over the shamans of the country, and the shamans in Russia gathered the mushrooms, and they carry them in a sack, and they come into your house in an opening in the roof, and this is the Christmas tradition. This Christmas mythology is based upon a mushroom, because what we put underneath the tree to give each other as gifts is a representation of the gift that we find out in nature of the mushroom underneath the pine tree. So for lots of years, people have been bringing trees into their house, and they don't know why they put the present under the tree.
But in Siberia, some of the tribes, the shaman, they're in a yurt-like structure with a center pole, which represents the tree of life. And the shaman, after taking the flageolet, climbs up to heaven symbolically about the smoke hole of the roof, and then enters back in with his gifts from the spirit. Back down the tree of life, and at the base of the tree of life, he reveals his secret flageolet knowledge that is brought back.
And part of that knowledge is the out-of-body experience. When the shaman leaves his body and does a spiritual voyage, he uses a spirit ally usually. And for the shamans of Siberia, one of their biggest icons is the reindeer. So the shaman leaves his body aboard a reindeer that rides him up into the heavens to have his spiritual voyage. So reindeer are very symbolic for the spiritual leap into multidimensionality and shamanism.
And reindeer also love to eat flageolet.
And reindeer also love to eat flageolet mushrooms. Yes. if anybody's hunted them around anywhere, they know they can find some dug right down and gone. Like Clark was saying, there's just like an egg sitting there and you go, oh man, somebody got here before me. So we have this icon that we bring this God thing into our house, and we don't even know what's under it. And it's this God in this mythology, this anthropomorphized through all these different religions. Clark said the Amanita is God the other day, and that's an amazing statement, and it's true. Here's a symbol that is ornament on a Christmas tree. Here's pretty cool. You have the fool. He's tightrope walking, right? He's tightrope walking, looking at the mushroom, and he's got the key. He's got the key, and he's the fool of the tarot, and he's walking along, heading right for the mushroom with the key in his hand. He knows about the secret knowledge, the key, understanding. Here's the Kabbalistic tree, which is really interesting because we have the Sephiroth and the different aspects of consciousness that Robert was talking about. And we know that the mushroom is associated with the pine tree. We bring it into our house, but this tree is upside down. In the top area, the crown is the roots. It's at the root system of the tree. Why? Because that's where the mycelium grows. This is literally the living organism of the mushroom that's underground. The mushroom is the fruit of the tree. So we have the highest depiction of the pine tree depicted at the root system. We have an alchemical question that's really interesting, that's been brought up in the media recently, that is, God says, when they ask God where he is, he says, if you split open a log and look inside, there you'll find me. What does that mean? And people come up with all kinds of just incredibly round-the-bend explanations for what it is, but the simplest explanation is the simplest answer. What's really there, if you split open a piece of wood and you look inside, is the DNA and genetic material of the mushroom, because the mycelium is underground, feeding it through the roots. There's the secret that's there. It's the mushroom again. And here we have it in this ancient alchemical question. Reindeer are definitely real. Lots of symbols associated with Christmas. Old Christmas cards, Christmas ornaments. And you might think this is just a coincidence that the mushroom is depicted like this, so I brought an extra one. I figured I might need one more at least. And in case you didn't see that one, here's this one. Followed by a couple more. There's all different kinds of these. It's not uncommon to see this. How many could there possibly be? Oh, this is the entire end of my show. Is nothing but more ornaments. And it's all over in artwork. Another one. Oh yeah. In case you haven't seen one. That Jesus or Mithra or Krishna or Vishnu or Ea or Enki or Ningersag or any of these gods are all the mushrooms. You know. That's why this face is depicted in there. It's the anthropomorphism.
This one's called?
So as shaman, we try to figure out what we want to do. This is a great music box that plays jingle bells. I found this on eBay and I didn't win it in the auction. I felt so stupid. I didn't win it. I bid $30 on it. It's only this big. Somebody sent me an email and said, "Hey, you got to check this out." And so I went out there and looked, and it says "Strange Music Box." They said it's strange because it plays jingle bells. It's not strange to me though. This is Larry Stickney's service. He's the past president many times of the San Francisco Mycological Society, and one of the key people that I've met in my life, because when I was first starting to study this, I had sent letters out to every mycological society in the country. And most of them didn't even respond back. Some of them wrote back and said, "We're not interested in that. We just like the kind you eat. Don't be talking about, what is it that you're talking about?" So Larry Stickney sent me back a big envelope that had, and I get this envelope in the mail and it has a giant Amanita stamp on it. I go, all right! And I'm just finding out about this stuff. That's great. Alchemy, all these symbols in alchemy. Here's the golden tree. the egg and the bump, the mound, which is what you find them under. Usually you have to look around to find them underneath the pushed up pine needles. All the time they don't always pop out. So this is a secret knowledge here too. Obviously the wing symbols, the cup, the serpents, the snakes, all these different things, the tree, and the phoenix over here. All these symbols it's just one right after another. Every symbolism on there is about the mushroom. And here's an alchemical. This slide is upside down. And it's actually a good thing that it's upside down. Because now you can see the hidden alchemical symbol mushroom here with the reflecting waters or the blood in the cap, the drinking waters. It's interesting that things get turned upside down and you look at them and they appear a little bit different. Here's just more ways to look at it. A lot of people look at watermarks in different things. And if you really look at this, especially in certain states of mind and under certain visual conditions, these things become very transparent and they jump out at you and tell you incredible things that you could never see normally. This again is the cooking process. You have to cook this mushroom, you have to heat the mushroom to change the chemicals in it. In Egypt it was depicted by this sacred ceremony where they cook it. You have to heat it up. Here's a spotted in here. Then they pour it in a bunch of cups, and then those that are lucky get to drink it. Here's kind of a find mushrooms find the mushrooms. And there's like bumps, different places on here. And I showed this to show you what it's like to go out into the field hunting for amanitas and find some under the pine cones that are pushed up into the bumps. Ancient mythology says that the entire universe was created by the mushroom because at first it was the bump on the mound, and it was the cosmic egg, and the cosmic egg cracked, and here comes the universe. It's born. So there they are. They're hiding there. There they're revealed. These are Amanita pantherinus. Here's showing one that's showing the bump. Bunch of bumps. Where they push things up and out of the way. I've showed you a lot of symbols, but this symbol right here. Did Wilhelm Reich know about Amanita Muscaria? Did you know about mushrooms? There's a new story that came out just recently, a new book that just came out talking about Sigmund Freud and his life. He talks about him going up into the Alps hunting mushrooms with his kids, amanitas in particular. And it's written by one of his, either his son or his grandson. And it talks about that, which is really interesting because Sigmund Freud was studying the development of consciousness and what it's like to be conscious and what it's like to think and the different causes and effects of your lifetime and things that happen to you and why you think a certain way. So we're talking about the idea of psychology, finding out what it is that makes us tick, which is a very good thing to do, to know, especially if you're going into out-of-body states of consciousness and you're wanting to find out what that's all about. Because when you go into these psychedelic states, you want your heart to be as light as a feather. People that carry around a lot of baggage from their past and a lot of guilt and a lot of fear and a lot of different types of mental states and psychosis states find it hard to have their heart as light as a feather. So that's what this is talking about. And this is the other world. This is death. This is where you go when you die. This is what it's saying here is that you need to have your psyche straightened out before you go into the other, before you pass on. Before your body dies and you give up the ghost, you need to have your heart as light as a feather. So that's where religious doctrine and religious dogma and religious control come into play. Because if your heart isn't light as a feather, you may not pass this test. So Ether, God, and Devil, Cosmic Superimposition, I suggest everybody read all of Wilhelm Reich's books because what he writes about is incredible. And what he wrote about was controversial enough for the government to come in and arrest him and throw him in prison, where he died within a couple weeks, short time after he was in prison. All of a sudden he died of a heart attack, strangely. And the federal government decided to ban his books, and so they went to all the libraries and all the bookstores across the country and collected every one of his books, took them to New York and burned them in the incinerator. And this is in America where this happened. Talk about the pharmacratic inquisition, and he even kept it a secret. This is the symbol here. He used the symbol to show that he knew about it. But he didn't even talk about it. And they still came and got him. And there's stuff that's in these books that is absolutely incredible stuff that you need to know about, especially about the psyche. Because where Sigmund Freud came up short, Wilhelm Reich, who was his main disciple, along with Carl Jung, developed it even farther and figured out what it's like to create a calm person, and what it's like to, through different cultures of the planet, to study different types of religious systems. And what happens, the difference is whether or not your culture is a sex-negative culture or whether it's a sex-positive culture. Or not necessarily sex-positive, but self-regulating. In other words, sex is not condemned as a sin in these other cultures. And it's not here either, and it should never be. And this is part of your big psychic dilemma when you go into certain states of consciousness. Some people take the Amanitas and it blows their mind so bad they don't ever want to go take it again. I think that the study of Amanitas deserves a lot more work than that. Because of all the symbolism, because of all the history of it, because of all the things that we need to actually think about and concentrate on going into that state and trying to find out what it is. It's not an easy thing. It's not all just bliss to do the Amanita, but you can find some incredible bliss in there. But it's way more intense. I mean, literally your consciousness speeds up. Your thinking process speeds up like it does when you go to sleep. When you go to sleep at night, your consciousness speeds up as you go into dream state. That's why you can have a dream of several hours in just a few minutes, or maybe even more. But when you raise this spirit entity up into you, this consciousness of the mushroom into your mind, it speeds up at an incredible rate. And this is why you can't be stuck in loops of self-guilt and trauma and psychotic things like that, because it'll just wipe you right off. So it's important to try to study that kind of thing. These are the bonobos, which are a primate that's more closely related to us than chimpanzees. Chimpanzees are a patriarchal system, or a patriarchal society. In other words, if you're a chimpanzee male, you're the biggest, most powerful, most dominant one. You own your territory, you own your women, you own the entire group that's with you, and you're the most powerful one. And anybody else that comes into your territory, you have to attack them, and they have big fights, and they actually kill each other. And this is the chimpanzee, and this is what they say is related most closely to us genetic-wise. This is the bonobo. Until recently they thought it was the chimpanzee. Now they find that it is the bonobo, related to us more closely through DNA. The bonobo society is a matriarchal society. The matriarchal societies never, ever kill each other. Ever. If they fight for this long. They may have a quick little disagreement. But they don't fight. They don't control each other. They don't have the territory. They don't have this mindset of the patriarchal systems, which is what we're really looking at when we look at the religions of today. The interesting thing about the bonobos is, talk about a sex-positive society. The bonobos have sex with everybody all of the time.
They trade sex for favors.
Sure.
For food and for
all kinds of things. They barter with it, and they do it because they enjoy it. They enjoy it a lot, and so they do it a lot.
Screw it all day long.
All day long. And if you think about it, now we really know that they're more related to our society. What kind of society do we want?
When they have a conflict, they have sex.
Yeah, exactly. If they have a conflict, it's a quick conflict because then they have sex. So here we're talking about a psychological mindset, though, that can really mess up your mind if you don't understand this, and you're forced into these patriarchal systems and this belief systems that sex is wrong, and you're heaped upon you with all this guilt throughout your lifetime. This does major damage to our planet and to the people and to the relationship of all the people to each other. It's the patriarchal systems that have wiped out the matriarchal systems all over the planet under the great guise of, dun, 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 we are the Americans, we'll come in there and wipe you out if you don't do what we say. That's a scary thought because, as Americans, we want our country to be what we think it should be. The peace, the truth, the love, the friendship, the sharing, the ability to have freedom, not just liberty, because liberty isn't freedom. Liberty is like when you're in the Navy and they give you liberty. It's like they let you off the ship for a little while, then you got to go back and work. We're talking about admiralty maritime law. Now, if anybody doesn't believe that that's fascism, what are the tenets of fascism? They want to control the school systems, they want to control the religious systems, the monetary systems, and they want to control the media. This is known ever since fascism came into being real powerful. It's the control dominance of the governmental system over you. And the other thing, the most important thing probably about fascism, is that they want to control your sexuality. So here we go again. The patriarchal system coming down upon us. Boom, giving us the big mind screw for all the time. Now, if you don't believe it's fascist, look at these. You know what these are? These are fascia. These are bundles of sticks tied together, and they got this fancy thing on them, but they have an axe handle right here. These are fascia. This is the seat of world fascism, and it deals with the control of us and our sexuality and our ability to practice pharmacopoeia. That's what it boils down to. It's our freedom compared to this fascist dictatorship of not only this government, but the religious systems. The religious systems and the governments are tied together in this big conspiracy. People say I'm a conspiracy theorist. I can handle that. It's only a conspiracy, though, until it becomes so obvious that it's happening. So the question is to figure out what it is that I'm talking about that isn't quite so obvious yet, and what it is that I'm talking about that is totally obvious. This is the rostrum in the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives in Washington, D.C., District of Columbia. Fascia. Fascism controls your sexuality, your media, your money system, your banking system, your religious systems, and it controls your sexuality at the root. That's what Wilhelm Reich wrote a book called The Mass Psychology of Fascism. Remember, I just showed you Wilhelm Reich. And he wrote one called The Sexual Revolution. He wrote one called The Invasion of Compulsory Sex Morality. What's he talking about in those books? It becomes pretty obvious just by the title. So this is something that we need to find out about. And here's the big official guy. We talk about the Pope, or the President and Prophet of the Mormon Church the other time here. We're talking about how pritchety and what a dark-faced, evil, monster-looking guy he is. And here's this old guy. And when you think about it, he really is the epitome of Satan right here. And yet he's got the power symbol.
He's hiding behind it.
Yeah, he's hiding behind it like, I don't know about this. It's like, please, this, protect me when they find out what I've done. So they apologize. Oh, yeah, by the way, Central America, hello, we'd like your attention, please, Central America. About when we came down there, we murdered about 20 million people. We're really sorry about that.
Yes, sorry about that.
We want to let you know we're officially sorry about that. Oh yeah, by the way, Wiccans and witches and people that are, we're sorry about that too. Monsters. These people are monsters. The Pope gave me dope. Well, no, the Pope didn't give me dope, and that's exactly what I'm bitching about. Is these religious systems don't give you dope. They don't give you the real thing. They don't give you the manna. They don't give you the bread. They don't give you the fountain of living waters. They don't give you none of it. They give you a bunch of crap instead. Or they give you a wafer and they say, here it is, eat this. This is the gift of God. And you go, oh, nothing happened. But you know what happens. You know why, don't you? You know why it doesn't happen to you. Because it's your fault.
That's right.
It didn't happen to you because there's something wrong with you.
This cloak he's wearing looks like an Amanita.
Yeah,
Exactly.
totally.
All the vestments of the Catholic Church are remnants of the ancient flag Erica. They dress like Amanita. The Pope wears his red cap and his red mantle over his shoulders with the white gown.
Yeah.
It's all over the Catholic Church.
Which is another good reason why we say that this is an atrocity here. Here we are. This is us. We're peaceful, loving, happy, normal human beings here. We want to control our own lives and our own destiny. We want to live our own way. Booga, 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 come on. Yeehaw! The sun, the mushroom is so beautiful, so powerful. We know that we think, don't we, that there's a planetary consciousness? Have you ever thought about that? Gaia, Earth, the planetary consciousness? What is that? Could it be that every planet in the universe has a cosmic consciousness? Wouldn't that make sense if we think the Earth has consciousness? And we think about the Earth's consciousness, and we think about our communal human consciousness. We're the indigenous beings on this Earth. So we think about our communal consciousness, and this may be associated with the consciousness of the Earth. It could very well be. So each race and each planet is a separate thing from each other one throughout the universe. Now we think about the net. We're plugging into the net. I know I got to move on. We're plugging into the internet. All over the planet, now all of a sudden there's a huge network of electronic signals that have information in them, sending to each other all over the planet. What is that like? That's just like a brain. It's electronic impulses going from one point to the next, all over your brain, all over the planet. We're looking right now and we're expecting that the internet is going to cause an awakening of the consciousness. In other words, they're saying the internet is going to wake up. Is that possible? It's an interesting concept to think about. If the internet wakes up, then what's it going to be? Is it going to be a big, powerful thing? It might be. It might be. So if we're thinking about that, and I guarantee you the governments are thinking about this right now, they want to put as much information into the internet that is what they want to be there, and they want as much information on the internet that what they don't want to be there out of there. This is like a baby waking up, and a mommy saying, I want my kid to know about this, but I don't want my kid to know about this. I'm going to teach him this, but I'm not going to teach him that. They're saying to the internet, we want you to know all this stuff about our power and our all this and all that, and we don't want you to know about any of that, so they want to censor the internet.
Russia just put a law on censoring drug information.
Right. So they're going to take this away from us if we don't do something about it. They're going to take it all away from us. It's going to happen. But we think about the internet waking up, and it's like a baby. What's the consciousness that it's going to have? It's what's fed into it. And what's fed into it is all important when it wakes up. If it wakes up and there's no information like we have, and all that's in it is propaganda and bullshit like we have on the TV today, then we're going to wake up a monster that's just like these monsters that are controlling us. That's weird. But we think about that consciousness, and we think about it waking up, then we're looking at a consciousness that can evolve. And that's what I'm just illustrating this idea so that you can have another concept to base the idea of the world consciousness and the evolution of the communal consciousness of humanity. So our communal consciousess may be an evolving entity that is really pretty much what we call God. So it's our individuals that have lived here, our spirit becomes a part of it. We come back, we become a part of it. So as long as we go along, we become a part of it. We're kind of feeding information into it that way. So we want to be able to feed the right information into that. Planetary consciousness. That is a big, bright, powerful consciousness right there. And that's why all throughout time we think of this egg, this orb, this glowing, massive body of power and light as a very bright consciousness. We think about the energy that we have within us. We have like a fire within us. We burn the sacrifices daily as we eat the food, and we burn it with our body and expel it as we move through time in this physical incarnation. Same thing as this. This is an energy field of burning energy. So if we think, and some people can argue this, but if we think that our consciousness is something close or something equivalent to the consciousness of that, We've got a long ways to go before realizing really what kind of potential there is in the universe for consciousness. Because if we can even think that we're getting close to this type of consciousness, I think that we've missed a lesson somewhere. We're becoming very arrogant in our idea of what we are and how conscious we are. Planetary consciousness, very, very important ideas. We need to find out what our place is in all this. So we evolve. Here's a good depiction of our planetary consciousness. We're kind of like in this bubble. We're isolated here from all of this other stuff. Yet there's a lot of power within this life that we have, and a lot of power within the universe and the existences that are potentials. Here's the mushroom looking like a bird. I didn't have that in there earlier, so I got to that one. What is the light that we see? Can we see it even in the energy fields of all things, the life force of everything? I see a mushroom symbol in there again, just by looking into the sky. And that's what I think the ancients saw. Well, it's depicted as the moon and the sun and the god, and all these different things. And it comes with the clouds. When you see the clouds coming, you go, oh boy, here comes some mushrooms. You know they're coming. That's why the clouds are revered. The lightning strikes. Boom. Here comes the lightning bolt from God. And the voice of God, interestingly, is all throughout old religions, is the voice of thunder. Either it's the voice of thunder or it's the voice of the thunder coming from a volcano, which are pretty similar sounds. It's a very deep, powerful, rumbling howl. And if you think about this, through the old religions, the prophets could talk to God, and when they talked to God, they were listening to the thunder in the clouds. And they talk about chaos theory and order theory in the universe. If we're able to figure out the order in a lot of things, there's things that we thought were chaos until we eventually find the order to it. Once we figure out the order, then we can understand it. And I think that there's potential through entheogenic plant use, actually listening to a voice that's in the thunder. I can't substantiate this yet because I just started thinking about it when I was in Costa Rica and went to the volcano. I didn't do any mushrooms down there, but I know that when you do the Amanitas, things open up to you, and like reading things, it just becomes so transparent, symbolic things. It's a very interesting thing that isn't quite the same with everybody else. But here comes the power from the heavens. It's coming down to our planet. Oh, is that Clark's house right there? Probably going to be a mushroom there. Whose house is this over here? Is that? No, that could be. Lots of different cultures talk about an oversoul and the possibility of an oversoul. So it's us to contribute to this oversoul by having these higher states of consciousness. And here's the auric field, which is an energy field that we all emit. We are light beings inside this body. All these energy fields that people talk about through all the different religions, entering the different chakras and the areas and learning different things. And consciousness, always depicted as different realms and different symbols, all mushrooms behind it all. So we have to understand that this is a mapping of the subconscious process. These people are working towards achieving some type of equanimity within themselves, and a consciousness is within themselves that can tolerate and deal with anything. Plants have spirits. We are shaman and we deal with the spirits of the plants. When we talk to plants, we talk to plants. People say that, and if they try to take plants away from us, try and restrict us from plants, they're literally taking our gods away from us. That's literally what they're doing. Because these are our gods. Are they not? Even if it's just the chemicals in the plants, which vibrate at certain frequencies. And maybe a combination of those frequencies. This gives us our God experience always. So in the Curlian photography, just in case anybody didn't realize what it is, this is the Curlian energy field of a leaf. And if you take and you cut off a portion of the leaf, the energy field is still there where the leaf used to be. Here's the pineal gland in the brain. This produces endogenous brain chemicals. Do you think with all these laws against DMT and MAOIs that they're going to come in and cut our pineal gland out so that we can't produce these things on our own? Endogenous brain chemicals, our brain produces psychedelic substances within itself. It's producing a lot of them when we're in the womb and we're being born. Here we are, we're coming out of the psychedelic realm, literally coming out of the psychedelic realm of DMT and pinealine. Our brains are flooded with it when we're in the womb and when we're born. Where do we come from? Why do they want to obscure this? Why have our books for all these years said the pineal gland does nothing? It has no function. We find out that they've known about it for a long, long time what it does. It secretes first melatonin, then it secretes pinealine, which is an MAOI, then it secretes dimethyltryptamine. And dimethyltryptamine and pinealine, or an MAOI, is a natural ayahuasca root. So our brains endogenously produce this, but as we come out of the womb and we're in a totally psychedelic state, we're in the most imprintable state, right? When we're very young, most imprints come right then. What does establishment want to do? Oh, here comes that baby. Get her up down on the chair, put her legs up on the stirrups, and she's, okay, pop it out there. Hang it up by its feet and smack it, stick it in a room by itself. With a bunch of other babies that are in there all freaking out too. You're freaking out because this is not the way to bring a child into the world, but this is what this kind of patriarchal system in society will do to us. They'll hang us upside down, they'll smack us on the ass, then they'll force us to go into school where they indoctrinate us into their full mind control trip. They force us into left brain thinking, which is wrong. They're not supposed to take children and stick them into school where they force them into left brain thinking. And what happens? The kids are, they don't want to do this left brain. This is not natural for them, and so they freak out. Oh, well, that kid's going bad. He can't pay attention. He's got ADD. We've got to give him Prozac. Get him on lithium. Get him on Prozac. So here comes this pharmacratic inquisition again, totally mind controlling and taking control of everybody. Now, if your brain is allowed to function, and you're in these indigenous cultures, these people are happy, they're joyous, and their pineal gland stays active. Because as you force into left brain thinking, your pineal gland eventually starts to shrink because it's not being used. You're not using your intuitive processes. You're not using this. It becomes an atrophied organ. And as we start to enter puberty, it almost completely stops producing any DMT, very little pinealine, and only, some other things are present there too. But to fully reactivate it, you can do light isolation therapy. If you go into a room for 14 days with no light at all, after 4 days, your brain will saturate itself with melatonin. After those 4 days, it starts to convert it to pinealine. And after 4 more days, it starts to convert it to DMT. So after about 2 weeks, you're completely back in a psychedelic state, in the dark. Your vision increases, and you can see into the infrared, and you can see into the ultraviolet. You can start to see spirits, people that are in there. You don't do it by yourself. But you see their auric field. You can literally see in the infrared their auric field. And there's people in Norway that are doing this therapy right now, dark room, light isolation therapy. It's called the Aton and Odin Institute in Norway.
What's it called?
The Aton, A-T-O-N, and Odin, O-D-I-N, Institute. And they're doing these light isolation therapies to reactivate the pineal gland. And to naturally reactivate the endogenous chemicals in your brain is incredible. It's incredible. They've put like 200 people through it already right now. They were just saying the most amazing things about how they go through completely the rebirth process. Because when you do this, it's like being young again. Here's your pineal gland, bang, reproducing again. And it won't stay like that, but it lasts a pretty good while, and you reactivate it that way every once in a while. The only reason that we have to do this is because it's been naturally capped off by our upbringing. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have to do it. But it's funny that these are the same chemicals that are in ayahuasca root. So these people call this the spirit root. It takes you into the world of the spirits, which is the same thing as we come out of when we are born and our pineal gland is active. Another interesting thing shown by Jason Callahan, is that when you get ready to die, if you're allowed to die a regular death in a bed, as you approach the dying time, your pineal gland reactivates too. Starts producing pinealine and DMT. So if you're going to die a natural death, you go into the psychedelic state when you die. You go into the psychedelic state when you're dying. You come out of the psychedelic state when you're born. And it's these chemicals that are the same ones found in ayahuasca, which is amazing. We have a chemical link to the spirit world. We talk about taking these plants and communicating with the spirit of the plants. It's there, it's real. We go into the same electrical, chemical, spirit world when we die, and we come back out of it when we're born. Amazing. And they're going to make these chemicals illegal? The pineal gland does that. This is the creator God here. This is the female, this is the male. We have the creation of all universe happening in the sexual union of these. This is literally God. The God is invisible. You'd be standing here, the goddess is invisible. Here's the act of the creation that forms us, and that, according to ancient traditions, formed the entire universe. Holy Grail. Isolation tanks are something we're not really going to have time to get into right now, but people do a lot of things to try and increase consciousness. Interesting stuff. Modern day movies. This was going to be the biggest part of my presentation for the next hour and a half, but we're not going to be able to do it, so I'll just touch upon a couple real quick. Contact was really interesting because Carl Sagan talked about the spiritual journey to the planet, the star Vega. And Jodie Foster goes to the star Vega, and she comes out of this device. They bring her up here and drop her like a spore out of this symbol. And she comes into this symbol, and she teleports into space, and she comes back 18 seconds later, splashes in the water, and it was a full 18 hours on her clock that elapsed while she went to outer space. So modern movies will have this theme also and can explain part of what's happening.
Also in the book Contact, they talk about mushrooms now in the area that Arecibo observatory.
Exactly. Now this is a big clue. They found the mushrooms there. Even Michio Kaku, who was Carl Sagan's friend and helped put this movie together, talked about what happened when they decided to figure out how they were going to get her to go to Vega. And the main reference that he brought was we had to make it like Alice in Wonderland. And that's in an interview. So this, even though it's a bold statement, this is God. It's anthropomorphized. There's more gods on the planet than anybody else or anything else. All throughout the planet, all the different religions. So this intigen deserves some work. It deserves some attention, and it deserves our attention. And that's it.